Disrespected cleaning. Lady finally reveals incredible secret that changes everything forever. Maria stood in the dimly lit storage room, a mop in one hand, and a stack of yellowed documents in the other. The weight of the world had grown heavy on her shoulders, but in this moment an unexpected thrill coursed through her veins. As she skimmed through the blueprint designs, a sense of recognition surged within her. A recognition of her father's dreams, a vision filled with color and life, buried beneath the dust of corporate ignorance. The thrill was intoxicating, yet tinged with a haunting reality of her own life. How could she, a mere cleaning lady, dare to uplift those dreams from beneath the dismissive eyes of the world surrounding her? Every morning Maria arrived before dawn, her hands brimming with the silent determination to scrub floors that glistened in the midst of suits and ties parading through the halls. Invisible to the commuters rushing towards their high-tech ambitions, her existence felt like mere background noise. The dream of a better life for her children echoed in her mind. The walls of the gleaming high-rise seemed to close in on her, molding reflections of power and prestige, echoing the conversations of those who brushed past without a glance. Disrespect layered on her with every exchange not made, every upward glance that passed over her humble form. As days passed, tension escalated in the world she knew too well. A major financial scandal erupted within the corporation she worked for. The very men who'd cared nothing for her were now facing disgrace. While her heart churned with anger, a flicker of hope ignited. What if, she dared to think. This is the moment those in charge must acknowledge the dreams buried beneath their neglect. Thoughts danced in her mind, exploding into a mix of desperation and rising determination. But that thought spiraled into a suffocating cloud. Doubts whispered at her consciousness. Who would listen to her? Would exposing her father's work even matter? Before she could fall deeper into the inky abyss of uncertainty, Maria crossed paths with Sam, a retired architect, whose eyes lit up at the mere mention of her father's name. His admiration turned into a form of mentorship she never knew she desperately needed. He spoke of the blueprints with respect and hope, yet as his encouragement wrapped around her, her mind filled with opposition. With her family's honor on the line, the purpose felt daunting. They were glaring truths glaring at her. What if I'm wrong? What if I fail? What if they still see me as just a cleaning lady? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As the day of the corporate meeting approached, dread coiled tightly in her stomach. What if presenting her father's ideas stirred laughs, or worse, rage? Would they see for the first time the woman who had scrubbed floors beneath their feet? Or would she forever be trapped in their shadow? Her heart thundered against her chest, each pulse a reminder of the stakes involved. The door to the boardroom beckoned from a distance, a surreal gateway to her father's forgotten dreams. Would this be the moment she made herself visible, or would it close tightly, trapping all that she stood for within its unforgiving grasp? Maria inhaled deeply, her finger hovering over the doorknob. This was it. In a breath, she could change worlds. Would she dare step inside? Maria pushed through the door, and the stark, sterile light of the boardroom flooded over her. It was a world apart from the grunge of the storage room, where she had spent so many hours invisible. The glossy conference table shone with an air of authority, decorated with stately documents and the sharp scent of polished wood. It felt foreign, yet intimately familiar. For a moment she flinched, the weight of her existence crashing down upon her. What was she doing here? She stood in silence, the murmurs of the room simmering down as heads turned toward her. 4 faces looked expectantly. The executives, adorned in designer suits, invited her into a realm they often dismissed. She sensed the condescension layered beneath their curiosity. They recognized her, the cleaning lady, the background character in their daily saga. But today she held an unassuming strength. "Hello?" Her voice wavered slightly, cutting through the veil of apprehension. She inhaled, drawing on the memories of her father's work, the dreams that simmered just below the surface, waiting to be expressed. "I'm Maria. I found something worth sharing." Her heart raced as the words slipped into the air. As she unveiled the blueprints, her fingers trembled, releasing the dust of forgotten dreams onto the polished table. Sam's encouraging words chimed in her head. "Believe in the value of your father's vision." She could feel the weight of his support, intertwined with her insecurities, bolstering her resolve. "But this is just—" One of the executives interrupted, raising an eyebrow as if she presented a child's drawing. "What makes you think we would consider—" "Because it's innovation," Maria interjected, her voice gaining strength as she fought to hold their attention. "These designs aren't simply blueprints. They embody sustainability and community. Your company—" She paused, collecting her thoughts, refusing to allow their dismissiveness to bruise her spirit. "Your company needs this. It reflects the future of architecture. My father built these dreams as a response to a world yearning for change, a world you're tragically ignoring." She could see the shift in their expressions. Confusion wrestled with curiosity. The tension in the room thickened, charged with disbelief and intrigue. Maria continued to speak, transforming her initial fear into a driving force. Her passion rippled across the conference table as she articulated her father's vision, an intricate balance of beauty and practicality that could redefine their failing reputation. But amidst her rising momentum, questions swirled within her. Could she truly sway their hearts? What if they rejected not just her idea, but the essence of who her father had been? Doubts gathered at the corners of her mind, shadows gnawing at her trust, but she steadied herself. She was no longer just a cleaner, she was the embodiment of her father's legacy. A profound silence enveloped them. Maria's breath quickened, inwardly calculating the stakes and weighing the implications. In that instant, she felt the gravity of her decision. If she failed, she would return to anonymity, not only as a cleaning lady, but as a daughter whose father's dreams were crushed into dust. Then the boardroom door rattled as it opened once more, interrupting her thought. Sam entered with an assortment of familiar faces, architects and designers exhilarated by the prospect of change. "Maria," Sam's voice resonated, confidence radiating from him. "Can you tell them what your father always said about dreams?" As she looked up to respond, the corporate elite stared back, a mixture of skepticism and uncertainty. Would she have the final say? Would they scorn the woman they once overlooked, or finally grant her the respect she sought? Maria's pulse quickened as she faced this unexpected turn, ready to reveal how deep the legacy of dreams ran and what awaited her reveal. What new knowledge would emerge from her father's teachings, and could it turn the tide in her favor? The moment of truth was upon her. There was a tremor in the air as Maria steadied her breath, her mind racing with possibilities. With Sam's words echoing behind her, she squared her shoulders and prepared to unveil the philosophy that had guided her father through hardships. His vision, nestled within the blueprints before them. The studying eyes of the executives bore into her, and she felt the weight of history's judgment resting on her shoulders. "My father believed that dreams are not just figments of our imagination," she began, her voice betraying none of the nerves she felt beneath her calculated demeanor. "He said they are our responsibilities. We owe it to the world to make them tangible." Letting that statement sink in, she lifted her gaze to meet theirs, seeking to bridge the chasm that divided them. A division shaped by preconceived notions and the weight of their own successes. "I want you to envision a new approach, one that dismantles the barriers between our communities and creates spaces that nurture rather than segregate. Consider urban living, the most efficient use of resources, and how architecture can serve humanity, not just the bottom line." Her words took on a life of their own, and as they poured from her lips with urgency, she felt the slick table beneath her transforming into a platform for change. She was no longer the cleaning lady. She was a catalyst for a revolution. Maria paused, her chest tightening as one executive smirked, his fingers drumming the table, dismissing her fervor as naive. And who exactly has time for this idealism? We need profits, not poetry. His arrogance ignited a fire within Maria, a flicker of outrage overshadowed by a keen resolve. Your profit margins hinge on the relevance of your vision, she returned, her tone firm. Look at your projects. They are blueprints devoid of purpose. And without purpose, you will fade into irrelevance. My father's vision challenges you to think differently, a call to action for a new standard that attracts not just buyers but advocates. The room's atmosphere shifted more dramatically at her words. Maria felt a tide of confidence swell within her, as the other executives shifted in their seats, their interest peaked. In those moments, she dug deeper, revisiting her father's mantra. To build is to care. But self-doubt clawed at her, whispering insidiously. What if she miscalculated? Could she carry this weight alone? Each thought blurred, then crystallized. A pressing realization that her father had always shown her the way, not merely with designs, but through the act of belief itself. Her commitment to this vision became the shield she needed against the scrutiny of those who had doubted her existence. As the discussions began to flow among the executives, Maria became aware of their ambivalence. She longed for clarity. She wanted them to abandon their cynicism. Their reluctance stung, yet she yearned to break through their preconceived notions and guide them to the truth hidden in her father's designs. Maria, Sam interjected, what if we opened the floor to collaboration? Show us how this can become a project that leans both on innovation and financial sense. Hope surged through her, intertwining with her determination. This was an opportunity, not merely a challenge but a redirection of their potential. Then let's set a path, Maria urged, warmth igniting her resolve once more. Let's transform these blueprints into consortiums, workshops, tangible outcomes that create connections rather than divisions. The challenge is to see the cost of neglect versus the long-term reward of community success. Reinvent what it means to be a leader in this industry. The executives exchanged glances. Expressions shifted from disbelief to intrigue. Maria leaned into that moment, her excitement tangible, sensing the pivot in their collective mindset. Was she finally crafting a crack in their stern exterior? But lurking within her burgeoning optimism was a nagging fear. Was this merely a glimmer, or the dawn of an era? The stakes felt impossibly high. Would they embrace her vision and legacy or trample it underfoot? With her heart pounding, she caught a glimpse of the horizon, a union of her father's aspirations and her newfound voice. Let's build together, not just for your legacy, but for all of us. As the murmur of new ideas blared in the background, she realized she stood at the precipice of change. The corporate giants could still rear obstacles, but they might also recognize a need for transformation. An idea took root. This was only the beginning. Then she noticed the older executive, shadowed by a veneer of cynicism, rise slowly. His eyes locked onto hers, unyielding. Interesting proposal, Maria. But what if it fails? What if you can't deliver? Who will bear that burden? An avalanche of uncertainty cascaded through her, and in that tense moment she felt the storm brewing. A storm that could either lead to a new path, or push her deeper into doubt. Could she stand firm in the storm that was about to erupt? The moment of truth loomed ominously ahead, a reckoning she had to face alone yet again. The older executive's words hung in the air like a specter, casting a shadow across the room. Maria's heart raced as doubt skittered at the edges of her resolve. She had opened the door to possibility, but now, one question threatened to slam it shut. Could she really shoulder the weight of expectations? Responsibility was an exquisite burden. Failure was a bitter taste she could not afford. Yet she stood there, the spark of resistance igniting anew. That's the essence of leadership, she replied, her voice steadier than she felt. To risk for something worth believing in. The executives shifted uncomfortably, their expressions torn between intrigue and skepticism. She sensed their eyes darting among each other, evaluating her words more critically than ever. The energy in the room was electric, but it also fizzled with tension, a simmering pressure that dared her to falter. What if she couldn't deliver? Those doubts had been playing out in her mind long before today. Maria's thoughts raced back to her father, who had always trusted in possibility over predictability. If he had taught her one thing, it was that integrity mattered more than the outcome. Building is about community, she pressed on, her rhythm finding strength in conviction. It's about creating spaces where people can thrive together. If we abandon that for sheer profits, we polarize our cities and our very humanity. A silence followed, charged with unspoken emotions. The executives seemed to weigh not only her vision but the challenge it posed to their established norms. It was the moment she had longed for, but underneath her animus was an unexpected vulnerability. Exposing herself to their scrutiny meant risking her own ideals. But what if this vulnerability was her greatest strength? Maria felt a shift within herself, an unsettling realization rooted in dangerous honesty. In this very room she was redefining not only her path forward, but also her relationship with all she feared: failure, judgment, and economic pressure. Escalating her manifesto, she directed the conversation toward tangible solutions. "Let's innovate," she called, looking beyond the walls of doubt. "Let's take these designs and create pilot programs. Test them. Gather community feedback before any full-scale implementation. We can benchmark success based on more than just financial returns. Let's measure community impact and sustainability." The room buzzed with mixed responses. She seized the moment to confront each lingering doubt. Adopting this vision may feel jarring, but risk without promise leads to stagnation. We have the chance to pave a new way that integrates more than the bottom line. What is the cost of inaction? The executives looked at one another, sensing the weight of the question. It was no longer just about her vision. It became a collective introspection. One younger member finally opened his mouth. "But if it doesn't work, how do we explain that to our shareholders?" A crack of frustration coursed through her. Why must we measure success on terms that uphold the status quo? If the purpose is noble, the gains, however abstract, should be validated. After all, isn't true success a legacy, not just ledgers? The room fell silent, contemplating the gulf Maria had just traversed. A few executives leaned back, their skepticism palpable. Yet there were others who clutched their pens with newfound urgency, engaged, compelled to rethink their positions. Maria pushed against the weight of uncertainty in her heart. This was her moment. She was not merely pushing for change, she was redefining who she was in this space. This wasn't just business to her, it was personal. "Your choice is clear," she continued, her voice a steady cadence. "You can choose to cling to the past and risk becoming obsolete. Or you can dare to innovate, to listen and learn. This is about our future, not just today's dollar." She felt the ground shift beneath her, but she wasn't prepared for the softening of the older executive's gaze. It was an unexpected flicker of understanding. Could it be that the walls of cynicism were beginning to crack? Just as that glimmer dawned, she sensed another foothold of courage within herself. Maria didn't just belong here, she had earned her place. The storm was brewing not just around this proposition but within her. Could she truly embrace this ever-shifting landscape of risk and opportunity? As the discussion sparked anew, a critical thought struck. Were they becoming allies, or would they retreat into old habits? The question lingered, bubbling beneath the surface of their evolving dialogue. But with each word carried into that electric air, Maria felt an unshakable presence settle within her. Not as the cleaning lady she had once been, but as a pioneer with the weight of a vision that could transform not only buildings but lives. At that moment, she realized, she was just one decision away from changing everything. What if she harnessed the connections being made in this room, even if the outcome felt uncertain? With the momentum shifting, Maria saw her chance to step into a new era, not just for the projects but for herself. The moment felt pivotal, and she dared to imagine victory. As she prepared to encapsulate her vision into an actionable plan, Maria paused. A sharp thought burned through the haze of possibility. Would the individuals in this room truly seize the chance to change their legacy? And just as she opened her mouth to speak, The older executive leaned forward once more, his voice resonating with intrigue. What happens if you are offered a deal that compromises your integrity? What will you do then? The question hung heavily, and the storm of uncertainty swirled anew, daring her to confront a truth that might reshape everything she had worked so hard to build. Would she sacrifice her vision for financial gain, or would she stand unwavering, even in the face of overwhelming temptation? In that critical moment, Maria's breath caught in her throat. The air thickened with a tension she had never anticipated, her heart pounding as the older executive's challenge settled over her like a shroud. It wasn't just a question, it was a test, a gauntlet thrown at her feet, demanding her response. She could feel the weight of their collective gaze, every pair of eyes scrutinizing her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. What if she faltered now? What if she crumbled under the pressure of the room? But out of the chaos inside her mind, a new clarity emerged. This moment was not just hers. It belonged to everyone who had ever believed in her, who had supported her as she ascended this precarious ladder of ambition. Taking a resolute step forward, Maria faced the executive. The truth is, integrity is the only thing I have that sets me apart. As soon as I compromise that, I lose my voice and my spirit. She felt a surge of confidence course through her. If I have to sink into the shadows of conformity to achieve success, then I would rather fail spectacularly while standing true to my vision. A ripple of surprise ran through the room, and she noted how even the skeptical ones reevaluated her words. Maria realized the power of her own beliefs. They were a beacon guiding her through uncertainties. Their eyes, once boring into her, now carried a hint of admiration, each executive processing her resolve, some even shifting nervously in their seats. Of course, dealing with shareholders is vital, she continued, her voice steady and firm. But have we considered the potential backlash? A short-term gain could lead to a public relations disaster, or worse, an erosion of trust. Show shareholders that we are about something bigger than profit, and they will invest not just in our products but in our vision for a better world. The dialogue flowed like water over rocks. She was no longer just the speaker. She was the current guiding an uncertain path. Each word she spoke was an invitation to reconsider core values, to embrace change not just for the thrill of it but as a necessary evolution in an ever-demanding market. More executives engaged, tossing ideas and questions into the mix. Bonding over their fears of staleness, some echoed her sentiments, with phrases of unity and vision thrown into the fray. Maria found their momentum contagious. With every moment, her passion reignited, and she recognized the swirling doubts around her were not just challenges. They were opportunities to puzzle through solutions together. But even as empowerment filled the room, a damning thought presented itself anew. How deep did her commitment truly run? Would she withstand the heat of scrutiny on this journey or take the easy way out if the stakes became too high? Imagine if we could attract investors who share our visionary ethos, she suggested, a hint of determination threading through her tone. The idea sparked conversations, executive minds racing to strategize potential changes in their engagement approach with stakeholders. A knot of anxiety tightened again in her stomach. Kenneth, the old executive who had questioned her earlier, leaned back, arms crossed as if he were weighing her worth. Would he remain an obstacle, an anchor dragging her ideals down, or could he be swayed to see the world through this new lens? Maria, he began after a long pause. How do we manage when we encounter resistance? What if our peers reject this approach? Her mind raced through various scenarios, but one truth anchored her as she considered his question. We adapt. Innovation thrives under scrutiny, she said, her voice gaining strength. If we listen to our critics, learn from our failures, and pivot as needed, we can craft resilience from challenges. In that moment, she understood her own evolution. Each hurdle was not merely an obstacle. They were pivotal points in her story, evolving her from an anxious underdog into a formidable leader who could inspire change. As discussions widened, Maria felt an electric charge enveloping the space. Yet it was mixed with the familiar thrum of uncertainty. What would happen if her peers attempted to cut corners or make compromises she couldn't accept? As if anticipating her unvoiced dilemma, Kenneth's eyes bore into her, a swagger of authority underlying his stance. Let's say you get that tempting offer. Hypothetically, one that skyrockets profits but at a cost to your integrity. What would you choose? The question loomed large, echoing in the quiet thawing tension among those present. Maria's heart raced. Could she really be prepared to face the choice between betrayal and authenticity? The stakes had suddenly shifted. She was standing on the precipice of discovery about herself and her worldview. As thoughts spiraled through her mind, palpitations quickened. Could she navigate this uncharted territory, crafting a future where her principles didn't just survive, but thrived? Feeling the weight of the moment, Maria inhaled deeply. It was now or never. She would face this challenge head-on, ready to create a paradigm shift, even amidst the uncomfortable knowledge that the balance of integrity was precarious. But as she took her next step forward, shadows lurked, whispering questions that could haunt her next decision. Would she find the strength to lead, not just through words, but through unwavering conviction? And just as she opened her mouth to respond, a fire ignited within her, transforming doubt into an unwavering truth. The future of her principles rested on the edge of her passion. What would she do now, when everything was on the line? Maria's heart thundered in her chest as she faced Kenneth, the weight of expectation pressing down on her. The air was thick with tension, a palpable reminder that this meeting could shift the trajectory of her career. She could feel the eyes of her colleagues, once skeptical, now filled with a mix of curiosity and apprehension. Her breath steadied, preparing her choice. Integrity must come first, Kenneth, she asserted, her voice cutting through the room. Compromising it even once opens a door that's hard to close. It's not just about profits today, it's about our legacy tomorrow. When she finished speaking, she braced for his counter, but the room was silent, the tension swirling like a storm waiting to break. With Kenneth still scrutinizing her, Maria felt a shift in the atmosphere, a collective inhalation, as if her words had struck a chord. But was it enough? Could she maintain this momentum? A flicker of doubt danced at the edges of her mind, whispering that the moment might slip away, that her idealism could falter under the weight of reality. Just as she prepared to regroup her thoughts, a hand shot up from one of the quieter executives, Megan, known for her pragmatism. What happens when the ideal is just not feasible? When shareholders demand results that don't align with your vision? Maria felt a rush of recognition and dread. This was the very fear that had haunted her nights. She could sense the shift in the room, minds grappling with the conflict between integrity and capital, as if they were all holding their collective breaths. But within her the embers of understanding flickered. This was her true moment. We create a narrative that aligns their interests with our vision, Maria replied, each word more potent than the last. It's about reframing the conversation. It's not a battle against shareholders. It's about bringing them into our journey. They are not just numbers on a balance sheet. They can be our allies if we show them the bigger picture. Megan nodded slowly, consideration etched on her face. Maria felt the cautious hope budding within her. Maybe she could shift the tide, galvanize the team around a shared purpose. But Kenneth leaned forward, skepticism etched into his features. You're asking for a lot of trust, Maria. Trust is earned, not blurted in a meeting as an ideal. What happens when the reality hits, when profits dwindle and questions arise? His challenge pierced her resolve, an arrow shot straight at her vulnerability. She could feel the panic rising, and for a moment, she mentally retreated into the safety of her original instincts, the bold defiance that had fueled her rise. Then clarity struck. Every revolution in thought meets resistance, she said, her voice firmer now. But history shows us that those who embrace innovation often find the most resilient pathways forward. I am not asking for blind trust. I am advocating for a shared vision where we rise together rather than at the expense of one another. A ripple of murmurs filled the room. Conversation sparked anew, legs of thought intertwining as some executives exchanged glances, ignited by the possibilities. As discussions surged, Maria found herself at the center of a burgeoning dialogue. With every exchange, she harnessed the collective energy, urging them not just to think about profits but their strategic advantage as a company, committed to something deeper. Yet in the back of her mind, Kenneth's question loomed like a specter. What if her ideas ultimately faltered? What if she couldn't sway the naysayers? Realizing that urgency propelled her transformation, Maria leaned into it. Change will always meet resistance, but that's our opportunity to innovate further. Let's pilot programs that can prove our approach works. Let's collaborate with stakeholders, not just for profit, but for ethical returns. As the room buzzed with renewed energy, Maria felt purpose reinstated. But amidst that motivation, a small but relentless voice whispered doubts. Could she truly convince those who doubted her vision every step of the way? The meeting reached a tentative conclusion, discussions trailing into a broader debate about the potential for growth. Yet as Maria stepped toward the door, she was left with a bitter taste of uncertainty. Would she possess the fortitude to face backlash from investors unwilling to see the value of her principles? And what if the resistance she encountered wasn't just external, but a battle within herself? With the door closing behind her, Maria's resolve intensified. She knew the next step was critical. Leverage her insights to formulate a plan that aligned not just passion with pragmatism, but also illuminated her path forward. As she took a deep breath, preparing to reconcile the fissures in her idealism and reality, a thought crystallized. She had only just begun to understand the depths of her own ambition. The real question remained: could she sustain her momentum amidst the trials that lay ahead? Determined, she resolved to not only guard her integrity, but to ignite a movement within an industry that so desperately needed it. But the looming specter of complacency threatened to claw back the progress she had made. And just as she began drafting her first steps towards that future, a text chimed on her phone. A meeting request with Kenneth. The message carried an underlying tension she could sense through the screen. What challenges lay in store for her there? Maria stood frozen in her office, her phone still buzzing in her hand. The request from Kenneth felt like a match struck in a dark room, igniting a chaotic swirl of emotions. Anxiety crept in alongside anticipation. This could be her chance to solidify her vision or a trap to undermine her hard-won progress. After a moment's hesitation, she forced her heart rate to steady. She acknowledged the risks but also recognized the urgency to confront the uncertainties that overshadowed her ambitions. She didn't just want to have a voice in this boardroom. She intended to transform it and herself in the process. As she prepared for the meeting, her mind raced through potential scenarios. Kenneth would certainly push harder this time, challenge her on every angle. She had to be laser-focused, ready to articulate her vision not just defensively, but as a transformative force for the company. Standing before her mirror, she practiced her expressions, tightening her posture. The reflection of her determined features met her gaze, a reminder that she was not only fighting for her ideals, but hers was a representation of a new wave in corporate responsibility. Suddenly, a small but potent insight seized her. She'd been thinking in terms of defense. What if she instead framed her concepts as an opportunity for growth? She gathered her notes, transforming her scattered thoughts into a coherent narrative. The notion of ethical return moved from mere terminology to a tangible rallying point, a strategy to cultivate investor interest while amplifying the company's moral compass. Walking into the conference room, Maria felt the weight of the moment towering over her. Kenneth's eyes met her own, sharp and assessing. The room was draped in the familiar tension. This time it felt electric. He was waiting. "Maria," Kenneth addressed her directly, "I know you've been gathering ideas since our last meeting. Do you actually believe your vision can align with the shareholders' profit-seeking motives?" His tone was dismissive, but she sensed an underlying curiosity. This was not just an attack, it was an opening. She straightened, determination surging. "I believe it can," she asserted, surprise fueling her confidence. "We can cultivate a narrative that intertwines ethical practices with fiscal responsibility. The market is shifting. It seeks authenticity and transparency." Kenneth leaned back, the tension momentarily easing as others leaned in. The scattered doubts she had felt earlier transformed into clarity. This was not merely a battle against opposition, but a chance to establish a new standard in an evolving landscape. If we can pilot initiatives that not only sustain profits but also nurture our community and brand reputation, we create an investment triangle. More ethical operations leading to better public relations and ultimately improved profits, she continued, voice rising with each word, emboldened by verbalizing her deepest convictions. This wasn't just boasting, it was a vision that could redefine their approach. As she spoke, her colleagues began to nod and whispers of agreement spread through the room. She had ignited a dialogue, but Kenneth was still formulating his counterstrike. What happens when those initiatives produce losses? He retorted, throwing her a deliberate curveball. Investors will not tolerate the idealistic dream when they see the bottom line dip. She inhaled deeply, the irritation sparking within her. Here it was, the familiar roadblock, a test of her patience and resolve. Then we show them that short-term discomfort can lead to exponential long-term success. It's essential to innovate beyond numbers. Our reputation as guardians of integrity operates within a broader framework than simple capital returns. Kenneth's eyes narrowed, but he was visibly contemplating her words. Maria felt the gears of her mind turn. Here was an opportunity to confront him directly, not with the resignation of fear, but with confidence born from her recent struggles. Are we playing a game of survival, or redefining how we attain success? Because I refuse to believe the two are mutually exclusive. The atmosphere thickened with a mixture of apprehension and curiosity. Maria had crossed a mental boundary, pushing into a realm where the stakes felt personal, not just professionally but ethically intertwined with her beliefs. The meeting wrapped, and as they dispersed, Maria caught Kenneth's gaze once more. She could feel the shift. Resistance was giving way to cautious respect, a newfound dynamic blossoming between them. But the weight of her words also bore a darker shadow. Success still hinged on proving her theories in practice. The challenge remained. Could she embody the change she proposed? With adrenaline still tingling through her veins, Maria turned to her notes, feeling the pressure of needing to act quickly. Yet as she contemplated her next steps, the gnawing question remained. How would she capture the attention of investors who thrived on skepticism? And just as she began strategizing tangible actions, an email pinged in her inbox, a proposal from a competitor touting precisely the ethical approach she had just advocated. The stakes were rising, and time was running out. How would she confront this new player on the field? Maria leaned back in her chair, retracing the last meeting's words in her mind. Kenneth's skepticism felt like a baton she was now forced to carry, but she couldn't deny the adrenaline pulsing through her. Her thoughts were muddled yet electric. She was standing at the precipice of reality, where the weight of ambition strained against limitations. The email from the competitor was a double-edged sword, an urgent reminder that the marketplace didn't wait. They had drafted a vision that mirrored her own, the ethical approach, the narrative she was so keen on selling. Her instincts flared in a mix of anger and alarm. How could this newcomer stake a claim on an idea that had been brewing in her mind for months? Contemplation turned rapidly into action. She popped open the laptop, the familiar hum resonating as she strategized her next moves. If she was going to confront this challenge, she needed to harness her discontent into constructive energy. She pored over the competitor's proposal, dissecting every aspect. Their methodology, their partnerships, and the perceived community benefits were all proudly displayed. Yet a thread of doubt pinched in her gut. They lacked the passion that could only come from someone who lived the struggle she had. Differentiate, Maria murmured, course-correcting her vision. This was no longer simply about defense. It was about crafting a compelling narrative that outshone theirs, one that spoke not only to ideals but also to concrete actions and measurable results. The urgency to act weighed heavily. She needed to weave together research, testimonials, and projections into a proposal that showcased a blend of ethical wisdom and demonstrable growth. As she organized her ideas, Maria's pulse quickened with each realization. This was a unique moment to embrace her narrative wholeheartedly, Experiences with mentors and conversations with colleagues provided a rich tapestry of insights. What if she could bring those voices into her proposal? Authenticity was her weapon. She could champion a vision steeped in real-world implications rather than hypothetical ideals. Churning through the details gave her a clarity she hadn't anticipated. By focusing on stories of impact, she could dismantle the counter-arguments Kenneth wielded so easily. Short-term gains at the cost of a sustainable future will be the downside of any plan, she whispered to herself. Each thought solidified her strategy, building a bridge over the doubts that Kenneth had successfully planted. Hours flew by, consumed in the womb of ideas and ambition. Just as she began putting final pieces together, her phone buzzed with a text from Kenneth. "Let's discuss the competitor's proposal in more detail. I want you to weigh in." The urgency of the moment struck her again, thrusting her into a new stage of preparation. This wasn't just any discussion. It was a battleground. Her theories, her fortitude against the challenges rising like smoke. Maria could feel the heat, the tension building once more. Fear didn't grip her. Resolve did. Could she turn the conversation to her advantage, expose the competitor's naivete, and present her vision as the more responsible, ethical choice? It was time to frame her response, expand on the narrative she held so dear while highlighting the missing elements they had overlooked. This was more than just a career moment. It was a defining clash that could determine the future of her aspirations. Gathering her compiled notes and stories of substantial impact, she walked toward Kenneth's office feeling a blend of resolve and apprehension. But just as she reached the doorway, a small voice echoed in her mind. What if he doesn't see her worth? With that question hovering, she steadied herself, ready to walk into the heart of the storm armed with conviction. This was the moment that could either escalate her upward or derail her entirely. The stakes had become personal, and with each step, Maria felt the countdown to her future tick louder. Could she convince him to see beyond the numbers and recognize the power of integrity? The meeting was an hour away, and she knew this wasn't just a discussion. It was the battle for her professional existence. As Maria stood at the threshold of Kenneth's office, a blend of determination and uncertainty washed over her. She took a deep breath, adjusting her posture, composing herself for the confrontation. This was not merely a review of proposals. It was an opportunity to affirm her place, to validate her vision. The office door creaked open as she entered, revealing Kenneth hunched over his desk, engrossed in a sea of documents. His brow furrowed against the backdrop of scattered papers and a single flickering light. Maria swallowed the lump in her throat, reminding herself of the countless hours spent rooting through data and piecing together her story. Now was her moment to shine. "Thanks for coming in, Maria," Kenneth said without looking up. His tone was clinical, like an editor assessing a first draft. "We need to talk about our competitor's approach. I'm not convinced we can compete if we stick to our original plan." Her resolve tightened and she leaned forward, seizing the moment. "Actually, Kenneth, I believe their proposal provides us with an opportunity rather than a threat. We can differentiate ourselves by focusing on what truly matters, authenticity and impact." Kenneth finally looked at her, skepticism etched on his face. "You mean by telling stories? We need solid metrics, not anecdotes." The challenge in his eyes ignited something fierce within Maria. But flipping the script can draw in stakeholders as much as hard numbers can. Our competitor misses the emotional engagement that ignites action and loyalty. What we have is a lived experience that they can't match. He leaned back in his chair, the tension palpable. "You say that like emotions can be quantified. We're in a numbers-driven environment." "I understand that," she countered, her confidence growing. "Yet the numbers tell a narrative when framed correctly. Let me show you." She hurriedly pulled her notes from her folder, laying them out methodically on the desk. "We have testimonials from community members who've seen real change thanks to our initiatives. Their voices illustrate a profound connection. Data is just data without the stories behind it." Kenneth studied the pages, his skepticism wavering as he traced a finger over the client quotes she had meticulously compiled. "These stories are compelling, but how do we leverage that in our proposal?" Encouraged by his engagement, Maria pressed on. Think about repositioning our approach. Instead of merely appealing to key performance indicators, we present a comprehensive proposal that encapsulates the spirit of our work. One that includes measurable impact but also encapsulates the journey, the people involved, and the ethics that guide our decisions. She could see him processing her ideas, the edges of doubt starting to blur. In this moment of collaboration, she felt her earlier fears begin to dissolve. Could she truly inspire a shift in his perspective? Designing a campaign that intertwines these stories with metrics could offer unprecedented emotional buy-in, she continued, her words flowing with newfound conviction. This could be our differentiating factor, a brand that resonates on a human level while being grounded in practicality. Kenneth's gaze shifted from the notes to her, a flicker of intrigue emerging. If we were to pursue this angle, it would require a level of authenticity and transparency that risks exposure, even vulnerability. Yes, Maria agreed, an unyielding determination blooming within her. But imagine the respect we would earn and the loyalty we could build. We'd be committing not just to market success, but to a movement founded on integrity. As the discussion unfolded, Maria felt the walls of self-doubt begin to crack. This was the engagement she longed for. Kenneth was slowly shifting from skepticism to curiosity. Yet, as they delved deeper into strategy and planning, a nagging sense of urgency stirred in the back of her mind. What stood before her was mere potential, a chance to change the course of her career. But what if she misstepped? What if the vision that felt so clear in her heart faltered under scrutiny? The clock ticked in the background as they buzzed through ideas, but the weight of that question loomed larger than ever. Would her determination to reveal the truth of their ethos stand tall against the looming market pressures? Determined to finalize the emotional narrative that underscored their proposal, Maria readied herself for the next level of confrontation. A conversation with Kenneth was merely the beginning. She needed to gather the entire team around this paradigm shift. How would they react to the radical vision she sought to unveil? With her heart racing for what lay ahead, Maria realized that the true test was yet to come. How would she navigate a legacy of courageous transparency in a landscape that constantly profited from deception? The real battle for her professional identity was just beginning. Maria emerged from her meeting with Kenneth, her heart racing. The conversations had sparked a progression she hadn't anticipated. His skepticism had shifted, but the real journey lay ahead. She had articulated her vision of intertwining ethical commitment with compelling narratives, but the challenge extended beyond one individual. It was now about galvanizing the entire team to share that vision. Days passed as Maria collaborated closely with her colleagues, transforming the momentum of their last meeting into actionable ideas. Empowered by the budding respect from Kenneth, she initiated brainstorming sessions, inviting input across departments. Communication buzzed with discontent, excitement, and optimism, illuminating a path towards a shared future. "Let's harness our strengths," she encouraged, rallying voices around the table. "We are not merely adjusting a business model, we're embarking on a mission that aligns profit with purpose." Each contribution created ripples of confidence, enabling a synergy among the team that had previously felt elusive. Reflecting on her earlier hesitance as a cleaning lady molded by societal expectations, Maria felt empowered. Each meeting transformed her not only into a guiding light within the organization, but also into a narrative architect who wove personal stories into pressing issues. Her colleagues' enthusiasm burgeoned, and soon they discovered innovative ways to combine community testimonials with practical project proposals, turning conviction into measurable impact. The new proposal began to take shape, showcasing a partnership with local organizations that underscored genuine community investment. The purpose resonated throughout the office. They were creating a groundbreaking approach that not only proposed financial viability, but ascribed an ethical dimension to their identity. Maria felt a surge of momentum, every idea crafted into something that could challenge the status quo. However, just as excitement peaked, the skepticism of shareholders loomed over her progress. As Maria prepared to present this transformative plan, she could almost hear the limitations echoing among investors. They would likely query the likelihood of success, seeking hard numbers over heartfelt stories. Yet her commitment to authenticity could not be shaken. On the day of the pivotal presentation, Maria arrived early, her nerves an uncommon mix of apprehension and exhilaration. She glanced over her notes for the umpteenth time, revisiting all she had experienced. This wasn't merely about her father's legacy anymore. It represented her journey, a challenge to see beyond the constraints of their corporate facade. But doubts lingered. What if her vision did not align with shareholders' priorities? What if they chose profit over purpose? Stepping into the boardroom, she felt the transformation envelop her. Instead of a cleaning lady standing at the sidelines, she approached as a leader advocating for change. Kenneth was there, and for the first time, he smiled, a telling indication of his support to explore the uncharted territory together. As she unveiled their proposal, infused with stories of community impact alongside projected outcomes, the air crackled with anticipation. "This is more than financial figures," she proclaimed, her voice unwavering. "It's a narrative that intertwines our brand's ethos with the authentic voices of those we serve." The executives watched with keen interest, their silence a canvas for the momentum building within the room. Maria articulated the potential success, intertwining logical proof with emotional resonance. As she reached the core of her proposal, a flicker shone in Kenneth's eye, an acknowledgement of the shift from just words to real action. Investors crave trust. What we propose is not simply ethical. It's a transformative decision poised for success, she concluded, a tremor of hope weaving through her words. Our identity as a company hinges on our ability to connect beyond the profits. By adopting this vision, we stand to redefine not only our relationship with shareholders, but also our legacy. The room ignited with conversation, and Maria watched as heads nodded, questions arose, and strategies sharpened. Skepticism gave way to intrigue. The transformation she had envisioned began unfolding in tangible ways, a collective movement shifting perceptions from mere financial frameworks to the beauty of connection. As the meeting adjourned, the momentum didn't wane. Executives began voicing their commitment to implement the vision she had so passionately crafted. The faces around her transformed, reflecting a palpable sense of belonging she had yearned to achieve. This was no longer just her fight, it was their journey. Walking out of the boardroom, Maria felt the weight of the world lift. She had not only stepped into her power, she had proven her competence in a realm once reserved for the unseen. The respect bestowed upon her felt grounded in authenticity. Reflecting on her personal achievements, the growth from that dimly lit storage room to standing defiant in a boardroom, she felt justified pride wash over her. She had forged a new path, one that amplified her father's legacy through tangible results, while also transforming her own identity. This was her moment of triumph. As she settled back into her office, Maria knew there was more work ahead, yet she felt a foundation of confidence growing steadily beneath her. From obscurity as a cleaning lady to becoming a respected voice within corporate walls, she had crossed the threshold of doubt. Her journey, illuminated by responsibility and ambition, had only just begun. The savvy, ethical leader she had discovered was no longer just a reflection of aspiration, but an embodiment of accomplishment, an unstoppable force of transformation, seeking to redefine success. With clarity and resolve, she looked forward. The landscape of her aspirations was vast, and the potential for growth was limitless. Now was the time for action, for change, and the world was ready to listen. You need to subscribe now to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories about individual triumph. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and help others discover these transformative journeys. Leave your thoughts in the comments below. What struck you the most about Maria's transformation? And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion and be inspired by overcoming obstacles.